We are just a week into the official start of New Mexico's monsoon season, and already there's been some big monsoon energy, if you will, across the state. That's what the kids say, right? Near records for initial monsoon rainfall for Albuquerque. Also the threat of flooding in several other parts of New Mexico that have been dealing with record wildfires over the last month. So today, we're here to talk about all of it in a live weather discussion and conversation here with our own chief meteorologist, Grant Tosterud, as I just adjust your camera a little bit here. Grant, thank you so much for joining us. Don't worry, we can fix it up here a little bit more, but Grant, we appreciate you being here today.
Chris,
how are you doing?
You know, I'm always happy to be here. I'm doing great today. I couldn't be better. We've seen all this rain, and even better news, forests are opening back up today, or tomorrow too.
Yes, and we, as a reminder, we are here in the KRQE News 13 digital studio. This is our digital space. As you see, I'll adjust Grant's camera a little bit more. You can see from the eye in the sky there. Our digital space where we get to talk about things to more of an extent, like weather, breaking news, election coverage. And so we encourage you as well to get involved in the conversation, of course. And in that conversation, you can always hit us up at Twitter. I am at Chris McKee TV. You can also hit me on the hashtag there, Hey Chris, and the same with Grant. You can do the hashtag Hey Grant, or you can also do at Grant Tosterud WX there as well. So Grant, the first thing I just want to very briefly say at a high level here, before we get too deep into things though, just that high level summary. This has been a good start to the monsoon season, right?
Chris, it's been an historical start to the monsoon. You know, we are 1 week and 1 day into it, and we have seen already in some areas nearly a third of our average total monsoon rainfall.
Wow. So this is, a big deal, and especially coming out of what was just a last few months of really troubling winds, fire danger. It is really good to be able to have this happening in our state right now.
You know, yeah, exactly. I was just talking about this yesterday. The stark difference we've seen from, you know, a record dry spring and into early summer with this historic and catastrophic wildfire season to all of a sudden quite literally just flipping the switch, and all of a sudden now we're talking about historic rainfall. It's really just a feast or famine here in New Mexico, it seems like.
And so we are going to talk about a little bit more of this. I know you've got some of your weather graphics here prepared. You can see in the middle of the screen as well. But just a reminder, folks, we'll be on for about the next half hour. Send us your questions here through Twitter. You can send us through email, and we'll try to get to them. Grant, of course, is our subject matter expert, so we appreciate you throwing any challenging ones at him. He may not appreciate it quite as much, but you're a very smart guy. So
I will do my best to answer them.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, so let's get things started. I know you created a lot of these graphics here, and this first one I'm seeing here is just from the start of monsoon season, right? Tell me about this.
Right. So the monsoon, according to the calendar, when we keep these period of records, is from June 15th through September 30th. So we're taking a look at the amount of moisture we've seen in a few select cities here across the state since June 15th. So just 8 days ago now. And these totals are impressive. We've already seen almost 1.4 inches of rain at the Sunport here at Albuquerque. That's where official observations are taken. But elsewhere across the metro, we've seen over 2 and even close to 3 inches of rain across parts of Albuquerque going back the last week, as the monsoon rain has really brought us some beneficial moisture here in the metro. Santa Fe's picked up over 1.7 inches, over 1.6 inches in TRC, over an inch down in Deming, and we can see where this stacks up this far into this season so far. So comparing this to how much rain we would typically see just 8 days into the monsoon, this is how we're standing already. We're over 1.2 inches above our average amount of rainfall this far into the season. And this paints a pretty clear picture, too, of where we've been seeing some more favorable moisture with the monsoon so far this year. It's really been for areas across the western half of New Mexico and up into the northeastern part of the state. As you can see, areas like Tucumcari, Roswell, and Carlsbad still struggling just a little bit to keep up with that moisture. But, man, this is just a beautiful sight to see.
Yeah. Wow. Those numbers are pretty dramatic. And just, I know what we've seen here in the metro area as well is a lot of consistent rain over time. Has that been similar in that sense across the rest of other areas of the state. And I mean that in a sense that we know that monsoons can just punish with rain immediately, a short period of time. But it seems like, and I'm just kind of doing my sort of layman's terms, it seems like we have had a monsoon so far that has really been more of a steady trickle, if you will, compared to the outburst flash flooding that we've had.
Yep, that's exactly right, Chris. We have seen, of course, these stronger thunderstorms that have produced some heavy rain over some very isolated and localized areas. But for the most part, this season so far, it's been a fairly light to moderate rainfall events that we've been watching. We've been talking about and how concerned we are with the threat for flash flooding, especially over some of the major burn scars just over the last 6 months here across the state. But with these more light to moderate rainfalls that we've been seeing that have been lasting over a period of hours as opposed to 15 minutes, that has really saved us from the biggest concern for flash flooding so far this year. Obviously, there's still a lot of the monsoon left. We're not even close to being out of the woods yet when it comes to those very heavy and localized downpours and that concern for flash flooding too. But yeah, the first week of the monsoon so far, we have been incredibly lucky, and I can't understate that enough, just how lucky we have been with this the rate of rainfall here across the state so far.
Yeah. So as we take a look at some of the video here, changing some of the imagery here, we do know that flash flooding is, of course, a major risk in some of the areas that have burned over these last several months. One of the ones that we're keeping our eye on, of course, is the Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon fire that, of course, turning into this season now in the top two there, between that and the Black Fire, as the largest wildfires in New Mexico state history. Some of the video you're seeing here, you do see some of the National Guardsmen for the state that have been working to sandbag areas to help property owners sort of protect what they think will be eventually some kind of flooding risk to a lot of these smaller communities up in the northern mountains particularly. So Grant, I wanted to ask one question that just sort of came to mind. The monsoon season stretches again from, was it July 15th through, is it the end of September?
June 15th.
I'm sorry,
through
June
September
15th.
30th.
My
Yes.
apologies. So
Yes.
through the end of September. Is it fair to say at all that as we get closer to September, we should expect more rain? As we get closer, I think about this from my perspective as an Oregonian. I grew up in Oregon, and as you got towards the end of summer, right, in Oregon, you would start getting more rain into the fall and into the winter. Is it fair to say that you expect that similar thing to happen here in New Mexico as well?
Yeah, our rainfall when it comes to the monsoon is more of a bell curve. So you get this big kind of hump in the middle, So typically we see our heaviest rain of the monsoon in early to mid-July, and then it kind of starts tapering off from there through the end of September. So the pattern we've been seeing here in the last week is one that's more typical for the kind of time period we'd see in the beginning of July. So it's kind of been a little bit reversed. That's why you keep hearing us say this early onset of the monsoon this year, because this pattern, this kind of moisture, this amount of rainfall is more typical for the middle of July or the beginning of July when we see heavier rainfall. So when we get into the end of September, usually it starts tapering off a little bit more and we kind of get these westerly winds to return, bringing in some drier air.
And I see you've got a graphic up here. This is related to sort of the burn scar flash flooding that we sort of see with that. Can you explain what we're seeing here?
Yes, exactly. So we've been saying this all monsoon long, and this was a concern when we were watching these fires grow exponentially over the course of this spring and summer, is that threat for flash flooding over the burn scars. And you have all the trees and the grasses on the mountain slopes. That helps to absorb a lot of the rain that falls on the mountains and on the slopes, and can help stop that water from rushing down the side, is kind of stopping it and slowing it down. However, when we've seen these incredibly intense and just massive wildfires burn through some of these mountainous areas across northern New Mexico, down into southwestern parts of the state, into the Sacramento Mountains too, it strips those trees down to the ground, takes off all their leaves, all their pine needles, completely just erases all the growth that was on that forest floor. And if the fire was hot enough too, it can almost act as like a sealant, burning that topsoil, compressing it, heating it up, kind of sealing it off. So when it does start to rain as we head into the monsoon here, and this has been a big concern, is that rain hits that top layer of soil that's been sealed over by that intense fire, and it rushes right off of it. There's nothing to really slow it down because all the grasses, the shrubs have been burnt off, some of the trees have been burnt too. And so that's what creates these extreme concerns for flash flooding over these burn scar areas. And debris flows too, because you do still have that ash on the ground and even some of the leftovers from those fires, and that water can pick it up and rush it quickly down some of the canyons and the sides of these mountains, and that creates the big concern too. And here are just a few of the burn scars across New Mexico. Calf Canyon burn scar, I mean, that stretches from the Pecos all the way up to just outside of the Moreno Valley up into the Angel Fire area. And of course, the Cerro Pelado fire burn scar up in the Jemez, the Black Fire down in the Gila, the Bear Trap fire just north of that, and even the McBride fire in Rudo. So that's going to be another concern too as we head through the rest of the monsoon. Yeah, just some of the areas that have been touched with this, again, record weather that we've seen. I guess that's just the basic way to say it. It has been a notable year on a lot of fronts in terms of what we have experienced here for New Mexico weather. I do want to talk just a little bit about one of the areas, right, where we saw the effects of that burn scar flash flooding. This is going back a little bit to, of course, the Cerro Grande fire. Now, that fire, we do have some video here that we'll show you in the middle of our screen here, but that fire burned, of course, several years ago. I believe this was around 2010, I'm sorry, May 2000, actually. Geez, yeah. I know there's been so many in the last 20 years. It's hard to keep them all straight. So this is some of the video of what we saw after that. The flash flooding, you see some of the imagery here that wiped out what we knew was the Dixon apple orchard up in northern New Mexico and in the Dixon area. That was a devastating fire that basically caused that family to completely close up its orchard, and they moved out, and they've actually now restarted their operations out in Minnesota since then. But it just gives you an idea of kind of what Grant is talking about. We have seen this, people recall in their collective memory here throughout, especially those who've been here for, a few decades. I myself got here in 2013, so sometimes the dates get a little mixed up for me, but many other folks, of course, remember what this Cerro Grande fire did. Just a complete disaster there for New Mexico. And you can see, I think there's a lot of fear that perhaps people might see similar effects, but at least so far, what we have seen has been relatively tame out there. I think, as we were talking a little bit about, we really have not seen dramatic flooding, flash flooding effects, though. But we have had some big storms drop a lot of rushing water down, gutters, streets, and whatnot, right? Right, yeah, no, we have, of course, seen some heavy pockets of rainfall here across the state. It's remained fairly more localized. We've already seen pictures of rivers running heavily. Of course, arroyos getting flooded, some bridges getting washed out too out into west central parts of the state. But that's just the hazard that comes with the monsoon, right? This is something we see every year. We preach that every year. Stay out of the arroyos. You stay out of flood-prone areas. Know if you're in those kind of areas too, because these flash floods can strike with little to no warning and can easily wipe you and your car off of your feet, off the ground too. So all monsoon long, we're going to be telling you, stay away from these rushing waters and the arroyos as we head through the rest of summer, of course. Yeah, there's some of the video that you'll see in. I might be able to pull it up here while I'm chatting here and thinking about this. But there's some of the video there from the Cerro Grande fire and the aftermath of it, where you can see inside of one of the vehicles that was going down to the Dixon apple orchard after the fire had passed through and the flash flooding was expected. This, let me pull this up here. Let me just remember my button layout here. So you can see I've paused it here, right here, but this was a photographer named Jim from Univision, and he was inside. Jim Morrison, actually, is his name, not to be confused with the lead singer of The Doors, but Jim Morrison, now a retired but a longtime newsman in New Mexico. He was the one who shot this video that you see in the center of your screen, and this again was back in 2000 after the Cerro Grande fire.
the flood that wiped through the Dixon apple orchard, that little valley that it sat in. And you can see he was in his car when this all happened. It swept through that entire orchard, and it just goes to show you, though, I mean, he was okay coming out of this. I remember talking to him once, telling him once I finally saw that video, and he was remarking at just how incredible it was to be in the middle of that. So, just incredible events can happen in a flash, and in an instant. That's, of course, why they call it flash flooding here.
Right.
So,
and it only takes a couple inches of rushing water to sweep you off your feet, and only takes about 6 inches to 12 inches to sweep your car off the ground, too. So it really doesn't take a lot. It takes a lot less than you think.
Yeah. So this video you're seeing here is, of course, just some of the rainfall we have had in the metro area in particular over the last several days, over the last week, I guess I should say. Grant, I know you've got a graphic up here, and I do want to put on screen here. You've got the forecasted rainfall through, I'm guessing, the next coming days here.
The next few days, because, we if you've looked outside today, obviously we're seeing a lot more sunshine than what we've been used to the last couple of days, but we still have some chances for rain in the forecast. This is through Friday night. It's going to remain a little bit more isolated, more scattered off into the southwestern part of the state, where you could see some totals around half an inch, but it really kind of lessens up a little bit the farther north you go, except outside of the Grants area, where it's pretty typical to get some heavier rain out there, thanks to this monsoon float pattern we're under. However, what we're more concerned about, and this goes back to the talk of flash flooding once again, is watch as we head through this weekend. The rain is really going to pick up across the northeast on Saturday, and then into Sunday and Monday, we're going to see some much heavier rainfall totals again across the western half of the state and up into the northern mountains. And I mean, you can take a look at some of these forecast rainfall estimates. Now, you can't take these numbers exactly because a lot of different factors are at play, but notice the overall trend of where the heavier rainfall totals are, again, western and northern halves of the state, including here into Albuquerque potentially too. This is all part of a cold front will be moving in across the state Saturday, Sunday, and into Monday. That's going to combine with still abundant monsoon moisture that's in the air. And once again, next week, especially Sunday and Monday, we're going to be talking about this threat for flash flooding returning to those exact same areas that we've been seeing all this heavy rain over. And another concern, too, is yes, we've been seeing this light to moderate rainfall over some of these burn scars that has saved us from the potential for flash flooding, but those grounds are saturated already, you know, and we're only a week into the monsoon and more heavy rain is on the way. So even if we see another round of light to moderate rainfall over these areas, it's still going to increase that risk for flash flooding. And especially if we get these thunderstorms to develop over these burn scar areas, like these forecast models are predicting again Sunday and Monday, that flash flooding concern is going to return yet again by the end of the weekend.
So I do want to talk a little bit about, I know we made a mention that we haven't seen all too much really dramatic, damaging weather effects so far. And I sort of range that and say, like, we haven't seen people's homes flooding out, communities evacuated, so to speak. That's what I think of when it's damaging. It may, come through and wipe somebody's, front areas away, put a lot of moisture in the ground and whatnot. But, when we talk about damaging flooding, it's like property damage, it's infrastructure damage. We haven't really seen too much of that. But I did want to note, we have seen one of these areas affected by some of the heavy rainfall. And so this is from McKee, as I understand, which is, Grant, we were just looking this up yesterday. It's a small town out in New Mexico, and I'm trying to just get the exact proximity out there.
North of Laguna, the Laguna area?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, north of Laguna, McKee out there. And so you can see this is some of the effects that we saw. I believe this was Sunday night into Monday morning when this happened.
Correct.
But essentially a localized bridge that was completely taken out by this, the floodwaters that obviously came through there. A little hard to say a little bit exactly sort of how that happened, but these were just some of the photos that were provided to us. And yeah, so you can see, I mean, in some communities, they do deal with, as I mentioned, some destructive destructive impacts from these types of natural events. But we do know, at least out in this area, this is a pretty rural part of New Mexico, not a road exactly that people would drive through constantly, so to speak. So,
but even then, yesterday we saw some very heavy rain and hail down in the Ruidoso area.
Yeah.
And that storm caused some pretty impressive flooding on the Rio Ruidoso.
Yeah. Let me actually pull that up. We do have some of the images that came into our email here as well. So I can try and put these up full screen. I'm just going to reframe things for you guys here while you're getting a look at this Moquino Bridge here. But here we go. Here is just some of the imagery that came in from this hailstorm in Ruidoso, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, that's all hail covering the ground there. You can even see some of this hail fog as that cools the ground, but we have some warmer air, so it creates that foggy conditions. But yeah, it dropped some extremely heavy amounts of rainfall down there too, and saw a video too of the rushing Ruidoso through the Ruidoso area.
Right,
yesterday. Thankfully, no reports of damage or anything like that, but still, it can really change in a moment's notice, going from a river or an arroyo with no water whatsoever to just a rushing stream of water.
Yeah, and I was just going to try to pull up some of that video because we do have it here as well. You guys cannot hear the audio that's being narrated, but this is a person here who is talking about their front yard essentially getting all of this hail in here. So we do appreciate as well that the viewer is sending this. Yeah, the middle of
right. It looks like snow.
Yeah, this person in the video here. Again, our viewers can't hear the exact words that are being said there, but the woman was describing as well, saying it was the middle of November again, and here we are, of course, in late June. So,
and it's incredible still just to see this kind of just stark difference between going from nearly a record-setting long dry streak. It was 78 days for us here in Albuquerque. Elsewhere across the states, it was longer. Santa Fe had their third longest dry streak on record, broken before the monsoon storms arrived. So the stark difference is incredible, but a welcome difference for sure.
Yeah. I'm going to look through these other videos that we had sent in here just to make sure, because I know you had talked about yesterday, Grant, that there was some videos of waters rushing through Ruidoso. I know we do have that one here in our system as well. I can kind of bring this up here, but from what you understand as well, this wasn't while you do get this water flowing through. What we're talking about is a situation where it doesn't sound like, and here we go, I'll pull this up on our screen right now. This does not sound like a situation where anybody was hurt or injured by this, but, it is still, of course, it's
still very dangerous.
Shocking. It's dangerous to see here, and we'll play this video here so you can get a better look at it here. But this was captured, sent into us here into our KRQE newsroom yesterday, and we were sharing some of this video. You can clearly see that underpass right there. That is, so this is normally a channel where water is expected, but this is a lot more water than probably anticipated by
for sure, yeah.
Just incredible video here. So we expect to see a lot more of this, I suppose, to some degree, right? When more rainfall is happening, we expect that this, maybe I should say, we don't expect to see a lot more of this as a guarantee, but rather, the possibility is ripe for more of this to happen.
Yes, like I said, it's already an early start to the monsoon. We have still a lot of the season left to go. The ground's already getting saturated. So the more rain we keep adding on top of this is great. We need it, but with that, it comes the concern of more flash flooding. We still have, 2 months left of the season to go, so there's still a lot of potential left for flash flooding here across the state.
When you think about the sort of experience that you have had here in covering New Mexico weather over these last few years, it feels like it, I'm going to guess, this year stands out so far for you.
Without a doubt. Just the records we're breaking, or near records we're breaking already, this early into the season is extremely impressive. And anybody here in Albuquerque knows that these last few years have been tough for us. We had a pretty decent June back in 2018, and before that we had another good year back in the early 2000s, but this is just an incredible year, and like I keep saying, I think the difference between just how dry this spring and summer was to the sudden switch of monsoon moisture is one we're all incredibly thankful of. And I've been keep watching these forecast models. I'm like, when are these good times going to end?
Right.
And for now, we're going to keep going with more and more rain chances. This is the official outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. This is for the end of June and beginning of July. That darker shade of green there up of the Four Corners region is higher confidence of above average rainfall. But you notice that the entire state is under those shades of green. So all of New Mexico, they're predicting to have a high confidence of above average rainfall into the end of this month and into early July, and even looking beyond that through the first week of July. So this is through the 4th of July holiday and through July 7th. There's still good confidence that the entire state will see above average rainfall into the first week of July. And I was looking at some more longer range forecast models that keep this pattern going even beyond that. So
Wow. Well,
we are lucky, that's for sure.
Yeah, it could be, I guess, if you're thinking about it, it could be a soggy 4th of July for folks here as well. So we'll see. It's going to be here before we know it.
It will be, for sure.
For sure. Well, Grant, I know you had one other element at least here, right? This comes from Arizona University, right?
Right.
This is, can you explain to me, what are we looking at here? Because I haven't had too much of a time to dig in myself.
Yes, so this is the Climate Center at the University of Arizona showing the rainfall across New Mexico since June. So Chris, if you could scroll down a little bit here.
Sure.
Under that first graph there's an option that says alternate color scale. You see that under total precipitation?
Yes, I do.
Below the map?
On that first one on the left.
Perfect. This is
here,
exactly
right?
it. So this is showing the amount of rain we've seen here across the state. According to radar, since June 15th, so since the beginning of the monsoon, all those areas in green there, you can see Albuquerque in the middle. This is a map of New Mexico here. All the areas in green have seen over an inch of rain. In fact, many areas in kind of that dark blue have seen over an inch of rain. The greens are over an inch and a half. Those yellows out into west central New Mexico, over the Manzanos, out into parts of Torrance County, down into the Sacramento Mountains.
Wow.
That is over 4 inches of rain, Chris. That is impressive. And even there's some shades of a couple pixels there of red down into parts of Catron County. That's out near the Daddle area. That's over 8 inches of rain. And we are only a week into the monsoon. I mean, this is almost unheard of how much moisture we've seen out of this season so far. And you can take a look at the map here in Albuquerque. Like I've said, we've seen over an inch on average, officially 1.39 inches at the Sunport since the season began just a little over a week ago. Santa Fe has seen over an inch as well. These totals are more than or nearly double the amount of rain we've seen almost all year long so far outside of the monsoon.
Wow.
And then if we go back to that other map really quick, the one that was right next to it, that
the percent of average.
Yep, exactly. So this is comparing it to how much rainfall we should see this far into the season so far, converting that into a percentage. So 100%, that almost that white looking area, that's average rainfall. But when you get into these greens and blues and this even lighter blue color, like the baby blue there, that's off the scale. That is over 400% above average precipitation. So it's really impressive across the entire western half of New Mexico almost.
Yeah.
We're seeing over 400% above our average amount of rainfall this far into the season.
Wow. And just to maybe ask you about this, which areas maybe haven't gotten a lot of rain so far in New Mexico? Is there some?
Yeah, we're still watching parts of eastern New Mexico that haven't quite seen our average amount of rainfall this far into the season. We're only a week in. Those deficits aren't big. But when you look at the drought monitor, we're still looking at some pretty tough conditions. In fact, Chris, I'll pull that up here really quick to show the drought monitor. And in fact, even show how much rain we've seen so far this year and what the monsoon has put a dent in it. This is how much rain we've seen across the state so far this year, going back to January 1st. When you compare that to average, this is showing the deficit. So far this monsoon, it's put an incredible dent in our average rainfall departure across the central part of the state. We're only 1/10 of an inch below average now in TRC, 33/100ths of an inch below in Albuquerque. That's a big change from over an inch. Now, we're still dealing with 100% of the state in a drought right now. In fact, New Mexico is still seeing the worst drought conditions than any other state across the United States. Now, this data only goes through Tuesday, so this does not include all the heavy rainfall we saw Wednesday morning.
Okay.
But still, should see an improvement in this as we get into next week, the latest update that comes out a week from today. But I mean, we're still dealing with some extremely dry conditions, especially out of the eastern part of the state, where we haven't quite seen those monsoon rainfalls just yet. It's typically a drier part of New Mexico for the monsoon anyway. But as good as this moisture is, we still have a lot of making up to do.
Yeah, to me, I think back to, what was it, a 78-day stretch that we had without rain
Without
here.
any measurable rain.
Wow. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was pestering you on Twitter for quite some time, waiting to see when that rain was going to come. I had a bunch of friends in from Oregon who were all astounded by, this was just in the last week, all astounded by the fact that we finally got this measurable precipitation here, nearly, I guess, 90 days. I always think of as that mark as like officially at least like 3 months, so to speak. So,
yeah, right, exactly.
Just incredible. And it goes to show you, I mean, that the sort of information you're presenting, right? Even though we've had a lot of rain, we've had a lot of deficit closing, so to speak. It's not all that is needed necessarily to return to some sense of normalcy for this area. And we still are in quite a dry time, so to speak. So
still have a long way to go, but the good news is the pattern looks to hold. So we should be putting a dent in it. That's the good news.
Yeah. So this is hopefully pretty informative for some of our viewers out here. What we're going to do, if you missed part of this conversation, we're going to clip the whole thing, put it onto KRQE.com here as well, so you can get a chance to watch the whole thing. I know, Grant, you've got the 4 o'clock newscast coming up, where you're going to get into today's weather and the forecast upcoming here. What would you tell people to watch out for? You mentioned the bell curve that monsoonal moisture sort of sees here in New Mexico. Being that we just started the monsoon season, just, what was it, 8 days ago?
8 days ago,
yep. 8 days ago now. When do we hit the bottom of the bell, so to speak, or our biggest point? It seems to be usually to come, right? I mean, this all kind of depends on what happens out there, but again, we would expect it's probably going to get wetter from here on out.
That's the average. Every year is different. This year already an outlier with how much rain we've seen. Like I said, this kind of pattern is more typical for peak monsoon. So, that's good. If we're hoping for more rain this year, according to climatology, we should still be holding on to this pattern for the next several weeks as we head through July. That peak of the bell curve, our highest average annual rainfall for the year, is in July too. So we still have a long way to go. Still plenty more chances of rain. Things are still looking good.
Interesting. Well, one of the other things I want to note is related to just the fact that because of this monsoon moisture, what we've seen today, if you haven't logged on to KRQE.com and browsed around earlier in the day, you may have missed the article here, but I'll put it on the screen here as well. What we're seeing, at least for the national forests here, is what I wanted to bring up, is that the national forests are finally reopening here for mostly, depending on which one you're going. This is the article we have again here on KRQE.com. What we learned today, though, just being that the Valles Caldera, the Santa Fe National Forest, Cibola National Forest, and also the Lincoln National Forest, they are all now reopening with fewer fire restrictions. There are still some of those fire restrictions, and we posted all about them here on KRQE.com. We just received the release as well from the Carson National Forest, which says it too will reopen here. But basically, these are some of the hot spots, so to speak, for the outdoor enthusiasts right here in New Mexico. Grant, yourself included.
I was going to say,
you do love hiking.
Aside from when the day we got rain, we ended the dry streak on Friday last week, this is probably the second best thing that's happened in the last 7 days. I am so excited to get back out there and get back into the mountains again. Yeah,
so this again is on KRQE.com. The article is called New Mexico's National Forest to Lift Most Major Fire Restrictions. And again, to say most, because you'll see in the areas of the Valles Caldera, we have this highlighted here in the article, but essentially in areas of the Valles Caldera, you will still see some closures because of the nearness of the Cerro Pelado fire. There outlined here, detailed online. You also have the Santa Fe National Forest, which same thing, has some areas closed. That includes the entire Pecos, Las Vegas Ranger District as well. That will remain closed. And again, they're all broken down here for you here on the KRQE.com article. I myself will make sure to go and update the Carson National Forest stuff for those who are saying, where's Carson National Forest? Just got to release the official information here today. So we'll add it into this living, breathing article here on KRQE.com here momentarily.
So nice to turn a corner, though, Chris.
Yes, it is. It is. And I'm glad you're here to help explain and guide us through some of this here today. So, Grant, people want to reach you. I know your Twitter handle is online, but what's another good way to reach you? Where do you hear from most people? Is it via email? On the
you
street,
can email me.
by?
You know what? Come up to me whenever you see me out in public. I love talking to you guys, so you can do that. But you can email me at grant.tosterud@krqe.com. You can find me on Twitter at GrantTosterudWX, and that's also on Facebook as well, Grant Tosterud WX.
Excellent. Well, and just a reminder for folks, this is our KRQE News 13 digital studio. This is where we do a lot of live breaking coverage, also in-depth analysis on things you don't see out of any other station here in the market. So we're glad to be here doing this online, giving you a chance to explore the news in another different way. And always, whenever we're live, we encourage you to get involved in the conversation. You can always tweet at us. We'll put the hashtags and Twitter handles on the screen, as well as if email's more of your thing, feel free to send those in here, and we'll always try to respond to your questions best there is. And I just want to make one last look at my email here to make sure I'm not missing anybody. It doesn't look like it. So, okay. Grant, thanks again for joining us.
Always happy to be here.
We appreciate our viewers here joining us here on KRQE.com. Hope to see you again here soon, and enjoy the rest of your day.